Hello, welcome to another episode for the MediaCast here for Funkit, the Funkit podcast. And as you can see, if you're watching the video, if not, I'm going to tell you, still in work attire, quite sweaty right after work, but of course not too tired to take a look back at what happened in the media, what was noteworthy, what should be discussed, and which questions did I get over the past week that I should be elaborating on. So let's jump right into it. And I want to start with actually quite some sad news, and I was really debating whether or not to talk about it, and like at which point of this episode to talk about it, in the beginning, at the end, somewhere in the middle, so that I can bury it with something funny at the end or in the beginning and whatnot. And then I thought, actually, it's really kind of close to home, and it's really important to me, so that's why I decided to talk about it right off the bat. So there was some news online over the past few days that a TikTok star, influencer, however you want to call it, an 18-year-old girl took her own life, passed away. And they said, the coroner said it was suicide. So then afterwards, the parents came out on social media and handled it in a pretty weird way, at least for me. They were quite open and posted with like hashtags like RIP for my angel or whatever, which just is a bit weird. But then again, everybody grieves differently, so no judgment here. Also, maybe it's just the way how people deal with grief now, people who grow up with the internet and so on. So no judgment here. Why I wanted to talk about it is, A, of course, rest in peace, and it's really sad to hear. But secondly, it seems to indicate that there were some mental issues of like depression and so on at play. And that's just a thing that really so bothers me, because it's 2021 and we all heard about like mental health, and we're all saying how important mental health is. But then again, no one really acts upon it, right? So I don't know. If you're struggling somehow and you don't know who to talk to or whatever, do shout out. I think I'm good at listening. So if it sounds a bit cheesy from a strange random dude on the internet, but seriously, sometimes just talking seems to help. So if you feel like you need to talk, shout out. If you know someone who struggles, just be there for them. And seriously, there's no, like, you're not losing face or whatever by asking for help. But I know it's hard and no one wants to do it. But we should all be more aware of this. And I think, mental health, it's like a buzzword, and like every company has like mental health awareness, I don't know, workshops or whatever, but then nothing comes from it. So I think we need to be more active here, like take it more serious, not just talk about it and throw buzzwords around, but actually act upon it. And I'm really disappointed, not only by like, I know, myself and others and companies that I work with and companies that I don't work with, like in general, the public in general, social media platforms, everybody involved is just doing a shit job here, and we really need to figure out better ways to, take take mental health more serious. And we're all in this together, right? So seriously, make love, not wars. Be there for each other, and I hope we will find ways to tackle this better and more serious. Okay, I don't want to keep the mood down for the whole episode, even though this is really sad. And like I said, it's really close to home. So I do hope something comes from it, maybe at least some more discussions and the like. But yeah. So if you know someone, reach out. If you are in any kind of trouble, you're struggling, do reach out by yourself. Okay, then what else should we talk about? What happened over the last week? Tesla has been in the news over the past week for several reasons. Actually, now, since I'm recording right now, maybe for 3, because Elon is on the Joe Rogan Experience again. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't talk about it yet. I will do this the next week. I just saw the announcement that the podcast episode dropped. But the 2 reasons I wanted to talk about Tesla is A, Elon on Twitter, of course, but they announced that they purchased, I think, Bitcoin worth 1 billion, and secondly, they announced that they probably also will accept Bitcoin as a payment option, which then led to Bitcoin to the moon. I mean, not really to the moon, but it was climbing quite nicely. Thank you, Elon. Then Uber today announced that they're also considering accepting Bitcoin as payment, which will obviously also drive the price higher up. So glad for once that I didn't miss the hype. So yeah, keep on tweeting, Elon. It's all good. And then the second reason why Tesla was in the news was that they released a new update. They released an update in China, on the Chinese market now for the Chinese New Year, the Year of the Ox, which just started today. And they're integrating TikTok now. I don't know why you would want to have TikTok in your car. I mean, I kind of understand now that I say it out loud. Okay, yeah. So you can do TikToks in your car and whatever. I mean, who am I to doubt Tesla and Elon? So you know what you're doing. So to our Chinese friends, let me know how it is to have TikTok in your car. Speaking of TikTok, also some local news, because I figured I'm in Thailand, so maybe I can also share some local news once in a while. Our Prime Minister had his first TikTok appearance. Yes, that's what we were waiting for the whole time. Of course, finally, our Prime Minister, who took power in a coup, is on TikTok. So they do this to reach a new audience, to connect to the young people, because we have some protests here, as you might know, and mostly student-led. So now they're trying to figure out new ways to connect to the younger audience in a better way. If simply being on TikTok does that, I'm not sure. But I mean, well, good on them for trying. He even had like those Chinese New Year's filter with like those Chinese lanterns in the picture. So good job, I guess. They said they're going to wait for feedback now to see if they're going to continue doing this. But he also said we should not expect him to make faces. That's what he said, because a prime minister has to act in a certain way. Let's see if the feedback will be positive enough. I kind of doubt it, but let's see if we will see more of our prime minister on TikTok. Speaking of social media apps, forget all structure for this video now and for this podcast. One thing that I actually experienced this week was kind of interesting. So after when WhatsApp announced like their privacy updates, I was one of those people who said like, okay, that's enough. Now I have to go. And then they backpedaled, of course, like, yeah, we didn't mean it like this. It's just like we're just bringing like brands to WhatsApp, maybe kind of, but privacy is still going to be something there, so I guess don't go. So I don't buy it, even if they're not changing it right now. They're thinking about it, obviously, right? So I'm like, okay, let's just stop it right here. Let's delete my WhatsApp account and then uninstall WhatsApp. And finally, I did it this week, and it felt kind of nice to actually delete a social network from your phone. It's not necessarily a dig on WhatsApp only. I'm guessing like any kind of social network would give me this feeling, but it was nice. Like more peace of mind. Now there are only 27 to go that I have to delete and uninstall. But yeah, I don't have WhatsApp anymore, and I'm not missing it. There you go, Mark. Ha! But seriously, so on a serious note, like uninstalling a social network is kind of a different thing, because usually you just download and install stuff. So it felt kind of nice. It's a weird thing, right? And should not be a big thing, but it made me feel like, yeah, cool. I am not a slave to social media. Only to those 20 other apps. What else do we have? Oh, social media. Last week, I talked a lot about what's happening in Myanmar, right? And I hope you're not forgetting, and I hope you're still checking. Hashtag what is happening in Myanmar. Because, of course, it's still ongoing. The coup is still ongoing. The protests are still ongoing. They still cut the internet connection. And there are now two things happening. Oh, several things. But one thing that is happening there is, and I followed a thread on Twitter here, so I hope I'm not misquoting it. So there's an eSIM provider here. So eSIM means it's an electronic SIM. If you buy it, you get a QR code, and then you scan it, and then you have an electronic SIM basically on your phone. And then here in Thailand, there's a provider, AIS. They have a SIM called SIM2Fly. So if you go on a holiday, you can get a SIM2Fly, and then depending on the region that you're going in, they will have like roaming agreements with providers in that region. So now if you do take the eSIM to fly basically, and you're in Myanmar, you don't need your actual SIM, you get the electronic SIM, and you have this roaming agreement from the Thailand provider in Myanmar, which means even though the Myanmar network is down and they're blocking internet access from the Myanmar network, you can still access the internet via roaming in this case. And if now the government would also shut down roaming, this would of course bring the government in trouble with their international partners. So that's rather interesting. So it's probably a step that the government isn't yet willing to take. Maybe if things get worse, more out of hand, maybe they will also shut down roaming. But so far roaming isn't shut down, as I mentioned, because apparently this would violate lots of international trade agreements that they have with Thailand, for example, or maybe even other countries, and hence this workaround still works, which is rather interesting. Then there are lots of interviews right now online from people in Myanmar, reporters for the Myanmar Times. If I misquote here, I'm sorry. I'm also one from the Irrawaddy, obviously the biggest or one of the biggest news outlets here. And they're all talking about like how terrible it is, of course, how like the human rights are not upheld, and that they're all expecting it to get worse. Based on history in Myanmar, so now everyone's expecting it to get worse, and that's obviously why it's so important that media coverage is there, that they do have this workaround, that they still can make themselves heard. Because once the media is really shut out and shut down, one can only imagine what would be going on there. So. To everyone covering, like being the journalists or citizen journalists, like everyone who's out there and covers the protests and everything, good on you. The more eyes on that, the better, because once we can't see anything anymore, then you're basically on your own. So keep doing this. Stay safe though. I hope everyone stays safe who's involved. Don't do anything stupid. And we're definitely with you. Thoughts with everyone in there. And I hope we will not see Myanmar sliding back into where they've just come out of. Speaking of, should I go to, again, structure, what is structure, right? So usually I have it at the end of the episodes, but now I'm going to just say it right away. So usually I'm suggesting like podcast at the end of the episode. I'm like, hey, my favorite podcast of the week was this and that. So this week, I think my favorite podcast was Joe Rogan Experience with Michael Malice. And I mean, Michael Malice is quite a little bit controversial, if you want to, but he also has lots of interesting insights. And one of them was when he talked about how journalists in North Korea are being treated, but then also in like other areas around the world. And then he mentioned like one example of Eritrea, I believe, in Africa, where journalists were being like held in a cage, and they left a cage just in the desert, and then they left them to die. And so you just see that journalism, while we're hating on like those clickbait journalists and so on, and they are the worst and they should go to hell, like journalism in other countries is still like, it's like a superhero, if you want to. I mean, they don't have superpowers, kinda, but I mean, they can really help the population, or they are like the enemies of the villains, if you want to, right, of the oppressive government, which is crazy. So to everybody who is still out there doing like real journalistic work, not like trying to divide the country, like hats off, you're really heroes. You're doing a good job and an important job, and I hope that more people will follow this again. I can see it right now that becoming a journalist is not on everybody's plate anymore. Even working for a faculty that educates in terms of journalism and mass communication, we can see that lots of people don't want to go down the journalistic road. They want to go down the mass communication, PR, marketing road, and so on, make money and the like, which is fair. But of course, we all need journalists that hopefully do their job in a way that it's supposed to be, like upholding a mirror to society, showing us what's happening, and just trying to make the world a better place. So for everyone who's doing this, like all my respect, and I hope you really stay safe as you can, and keep up doing what you're doing. It's really important. It's important work. What else did we have? Oh yeah. Gina Carano, and I'm interested in her, not in her, but in the person, for two reasons. A, of course, I'm really into MMA, as you might know if you've seen my MMA episodes. So she was a famous MMA fighter from back in the day. And then B, of course, she's in the Star Wars universe, and Star Wars is awesome. And she got kicked off of The Mandalorian for her Twitter outbursts, so to speak, for what she was writing on Twitter. And I mean, it's deleted, but I think she wrote something like, she compared if someone is mistreated or stereotyped because of their political views. She's a Trump supporter in the States. She compared this to how Nazi Germany treated the Jewish people back then, in the during the Holocaust. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a no-go. I'm still, because I mean, me being German, I obviously had to study and listen to what happened back then over and over and over again. And fair enough, because that was obviously terrible what happened. And one should learn about this. And yeah, never again. It's like the saying that always has been quoted when it comes like to remember those events. I still can understand like how people just use this as, I don't know, as an example, like, hey, it's just like the Holocaust. No, it's not. Yeah, no matter what you think, it's not just like the Holocaust. And that was a really stupid thing to say. And I think she doubled down then in some posts before she deleted all of it. So, I mean, you can't be surprised if Disney then says, sorry, but no. Yeah. And it was a big outrage, of course, like hashtag cancel Gina Carano or fire Gina Carano or something. So, yeah, now she's going to feel all oppressed probably. But seriously, I mean, just sometimes, yeah, a little bit introspective, think what you did. Just a sorry would have been enough, I guess. But yeah, okay. Can't help those people sometimes. What else do we have this week? Clubhouse keeps booming. Apparently, they're valued at 100 million already without, like, I don't know, people even being on there. I mean, yeah, of course you're on there if you're VIP and you've got your iPhone. How in the... Can you value a startup at 100 million or whatever if it excludes the majority of the people that are using smartphones? I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's cool, iPhone, woo, woo. F you, seriously. If you exclude like everybody else in the world, it's not a social network, it's an elitist network, and I just don't give. But of course, with all the superpower behind Clubhouse and Kevin Hart apparently being involved, like in the early stage, so there is lots of money, power, and everything behind it. They're probably gonna push it to the moon or try to push it to the moon. Even Elon's having fun on there because he said he's gonna do like a session. I don't know with whom, with someone crazy, I believe. I forgot. I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Jones would pop up there at some point. So yeah, but still, how can you just make it available for only iPhone users? Nah, whatever. It just doesn't make sense. But okay, make it elitist so that everybody wants it. So that the hype is big. Yeah, I understand, but yeah, I'm just mad because I'm not on Clubhouse. I'm into deleting social media apps right now. I don't want to be in Clubhouse. There you go. If you're on Clubhouse, don't let me know how it is. In all seriousness, though, of course, it seems to be booming. Lots of people still joining, like lots of celebrities saying they're having fun on there, probably getting paid for that. But yeah, all power to them. It's something new, at least somehow. So let's see where that goes. I'm all for new concepts, even if the new concept is like taking radio and selling it as a new concept. But I'm all for new concepts. Speaking of new concepts, old concept. China banned the BBC. Why? Because the UK banned, revoked the TV license for a Chinese station. And so China's like, hey, BBC, you're inciting or reporting fake news or whatever. You're not allowed to broadcast from here anymore. So now China banned the BBC. It's like, it was very obvious, right? That the UK says, hey, the Chinese TV station can't do this anymore. Then China's like, yeah, okay, then the BBC can do this here anymore. A bit pity, but okay, that's how it goes. A documentary also aired on framing Britney Spears, which was interesting. So this kind of highlighted how the media just fucked up. I had to say it, fucked up Britney Spears, right? So how the media really mistreated her and stalked her and basically led to her going, going downhill in terms of like her mental health and so on. And after the documentary aired, like lots of outlets actually apologized to Britney Spears, saying like, sorry Britney, it's on us. We were a-holes and so on. Like Paris Hilton also said that he was too harsh on her and he's sorry for everything. So there's now an outpouring of sympathy towards Britney Spears after they saw like how the media actually treated her, followed her around, stalked her, and so on. Which is a good thing. That, I mean, it's sad that it took so long for them to realize it, but it's a good thing that it eventually happened, and maybe that leads to, I don't know, those gossip news being a bit more tactful. And while I'm saying this, I'm thinking, no, probably not. But maybe for a few weeks it leads to I don't know, all of us and maybe TMC being a bit more tactful, a bit nicer until the clicks go down, and then probably they go right back at it. But yeah, it's just something interesting to see like how the media actually can F up your life, and that's something that many people aren't aware of. And yeah, celebrities, they sign for this, they get lots of money, they get famous, don't have to work a real job ever again. True, but still, it still F's with their life. So sometimes it's just important to also visualize that and see that. And the documentary apparently did a good job raising awareness here. So poor Britney, let's hope that everything's going to get better from now on. Let's hope that those conspiracies aren't true and that she's actually doing fine, doing well. What else? Oh yeah, I had one more thing. The president of Microsoft, he called on other countries to follow the Australian, I don't know, approach when it comes to the media bargaining code, right? We talked about this 2 weeks ago or so, when Google said they might leave Australia if Australia goes through with the media bargaining code, and then the US government tried to convince Australia not to do it, but Australia's like, yeah, mate, we don't listen to you, mate. We do what we want, mate. My Aussie accent is terrible, I'm sorry. I love you, Australia. I lived there for a while. The president of Microsoft said other countries should follow. What they're doing basically is they say like search engines and other companies that use existing content in their search results, for example, they should pay those outlets, those newspapers and so on, for using this content. Google now says, well, if you wouldn't show pieces of your content, no one would find you. So why should we pay for it? Like that's kind of like this back and forth. And then Google said if this bargaining code, this law becomes a law in Australia, they might just leave Australia. And then, well, Australia doesn't have Google anymore. They're not going to do it. But also, I don't think that the bargaining code will be super strict as Australia suggested it to be. There will be like some middle ground because money talks. And the fact that Microsoft is now in there like, hey, yeah, more people should do it because no one's using Bing. You don't have to pay that much. I don't know. Right now, what we can see in the media, and now serious for a second, and what we can see in the media is, of course, that privacy is the battleground right now. Right? We see like Apple coming out like hating on social media, saying like privacy is more important, Facebook is the devil, and Apple Apple considers privacy to be more important. Are they doing it because they really think so, or are they doing it because they're seeing this is a battleground and this is something people now care more about, and that's how they want to reel in more people? Yeah, that's anybody's guess. And now Microsoft doing the same thing, right? Say, okay, privacy is an important issue right now. That's where Google seems to struggle. Let's jump onto the bandwagon and see that Google struggles there, Facebook struggles there. Let's just fuel the fire and say, hey, we are for that thing that like is better for the smaller journalists. If it's really better, I honestly have to go into more detail to be honest. Like, yes, of course you get paid, which is good, but then will they still show all your results, or will they change the algorithm, for example, so that once you get paid, they won't show you anymore? So once you were in there and then you had a certain amount of click-through rate, maybe, then they will take you out of the algorithm so that you don't earn too much or something. I don't know. That's things we have to wait and see what's going to happen. So I'm always a bit careful when companies try to be like holier than anything else. Like, hey, we are Microsoft. We're just for the user. We're for the little man. We're fighting for the little man. Yeah, right. Microsoft fighting for the little man. I don't believe it. I also don't believe that Tim Cook is the nice guy who says like, we want privacy for everybody because we're fighting for normal people. No, you don't. You just want to convince us to buy more of your products. But as I mentioned earlier, if this fight, those battlegrounds lead to us getting more privacy, better products, so be it. Go fight. I just don't believe that they're doing it just for us. Okay, that's a bit of the news this week. Then I had 2 questions in regards to some media theories. One question was, could you quickly and a media theory. Nice. Could you quickly explain technological determinism? Yeah, sure. And the other one was, could you also briefly, thank you for using a different word, briefly elaborate on a few media audience theories. Quickly. Oh, nice. Okay, let me show you my slides. So technological determinism, right? So determinism basically means that you are not in control of all the decisions that you make. You don't decide things based on your own will. You decide things based on what influences you. So you grow up with your parents influence you, your friends, your maybe religious beliefs influence you. So your surrounding influences you, your job, the school that you're in, the uni, your professors, and so on. So those are things that influence your decision making, meaning the decisions you make are not based on your own will, they're based on things that determine how you behave. So that's determinism in a nutshell. So now technological determinism is a theory that says, okay, we think that technology influences the way society develops. So we IT people, media people to an extension, that because we are using technology, we are those people who are usually in favor of technological determinism. We're saying, okay, so technology develops in a certain way and this then influences society. Yeah, we have TikTok, now people communicate in a different way. We had Snapchat, IG stories, then people communicate in a different way. They change how they communicate. We had Tinder, it changes how people dating, right? Swiping and so on. I think I never tried, of course. So that's technological determinism. It's also, we developed the car and now people take a car and they don't take the horse anymore, for example. Okay, but then, of course, there are others who say, yeah, wait, but it's not always the case. It's not technology influencing society. Technology develops because of society. So people said, hey, I'm freaking tired of always taking care of my horse and then my horse is so slow and then my horse is sick and then I can't go anywhere. I need something better. Yo, Henry, can you help me? And then they developed a car, for example. In a nutshell, like a very, very short. So then there's this back and forth between people who think technological determinism is true and others who are saying, like, it's more like the conservative historical approach. They're like, yeah, wait, I don't think that is true because actually society leads to technology evolving. Now the question is, of course, what is true? And as always, with any kind of media theory or any kind of theory out there, it's like both, right? Sometimes one side pushes and pulls a bit more than the other time the other side pushes and pulls a bit more. Yeah. For the car, for example, maybe it was more like, okay, I made a scientific breakthrough. I haven't been there, so I'm just guessing. We can now do this and this and this and this, and this could lead to us moving without actually having to use horses. And then the society is like, finally, and then they embraced it after a while. Sorry, even though that embracing probably took a while. And so on. So this is technological determinism in a nutshell. So how technology influences society. This, of course, is hard to actually analyze whether or not that is like to which extent it's true. Yeah, I would say it's true to some extent. Of course, technology influences society somehow, but it also depends on that society. Yeah, not every society, every country, every culture is the same. You have cultural restraints at some places. Here in Thailand, we have some kind of censorship sometimes. You can't say everything and use everything all the time, of course. You have technological constraints. Like maybe there's no 4G, 5G available. Maybe you don't have an internet connection. Right? So there are constraints that influence how technology develops and how technology influences a society. That's why I would say, again, in a nutshell right now, in a 5-minute explanation, that technological determinism is not always true, but it holds up to some extent, because to some extent, obviously, technology influences society. Case in point, the way we're communicating, the way you're watching this video or listening to this podcast right now. Okay. That's usually a 3-hour class, so I explain it like in 5 minutes. So really nutshell, okay? If you have any more specific questions, please do shout out. For example, there are so many different areas, like what makes a technology take off? What happens if a technology takes off? What happens if there's some momentum behind the technology? So there are many more aspects to this whole determinism thing, but that was it, like, again, in a nutshell, in short. And then the other question was, can you briefly, so not quickly, but briefly elaborate on a few media audiences? And then there are like 3 media audiences here on the notes. Okay, so the first one, the hypodermic needle. Good question, especially question to a German person. So the hypodermic needle theory simply means that's what the Germans used in the Second World War, to brainwash the audience, basically, for propaganda. It's like you repeat a message over and over and over and over and over again until the audience believes what you're saying, because there's no other way around. You see the same message on all the channels all the time, so you can't escape it. That's why it's called hypodermic needle. It's like injecting the message that the sender of the message wants you to understand. So that's the hypodermic needle. I don't think that this approach is still very useful today. Maybe besides for North Korea. But it definitely worked back then in the Second World War, and there are still certain times when we see it happening here. Some kind of advertising, for example, they try to send messages over and over again. Some governments try this too, but of course, we now have more choices, right? So we don't need to listen to the same message over and over again. If you choose to, you can ignore those messages, scroll, zap somewhere else, and so on. So that's one, hypodermic needle. Again, nutshell explanations right here, right? Then the other one is the two-step flow theory. And I always think about Chiara. One, two-step. One, two-step. Two-step flow theory. So two-step flow theory simply now says, okay, so you've got some information out there, and then this is you, right? So you want the information. But if the information comes in its raw form at you, and you're coming home after work, you're tired, and then all the information just comes at you like, oh my God, that's TMI, too much information. I can't handle this right now. That's where two-step flow comes into place. Means there is someone in the middle. Some influencer, maybe someone you trust, a TV show anchor, a news anchor, for example. So then this middleman takes off the information, makes sense of it, adds their own spin, obviously, and then passes it on to the audience. That's good because you don't have to comprehend all the raw information. It's not so good because you have to trust this middleman. If this middleman just spins it somehow and adds their own take on things and then makes up their own mind and tries to influence you, then it could be negative. Examples, news. All the time. Look at Fox News, putting always their spin on it, right? CNN, the same thing, just from the other side, spinning in the other way around, right? So no one gives you actually only the news breakdown and then lets you make up your own mind. They all break down the news and then add their own spin so that you don't have to think about. They just want you to agree. So in theory, the two-step would be cool if this middle person, man, whatever, would be very trustworthy and unbiased and so on. In real life, everybody has an agenda, right? So agenda setting is real, so how much can you trust them? But then, that's why we pick who we follow, and we hopefully follow people that we can trust, that we think are most trustworthy. And that's then how it works, right? That's also politicians, for example. Politicians are those middle people. We elect the politicians that we trust the most, that we trust to make the best decisions, giving the information that they're getting. So that's the two-step flow. Let me hear the two-step flow theory. The third one, use and gratification theory. That's actually the one that's very much accepted by almost every media researcher. It's like you pick what you wanna watch, read, hear, because it makes you happy. So even if you're part of the audience of 18 to 23-year-olds living in Bangkok, studying at university, if you want to add a gender to it. If you don't want, then don't. Even if you're part of this audience, you're not behaving like everybody else, right? So because you pick what you think is interesting to you. So use and gratification means I'm gonna drink this, and I know it's not good. I'm sorry, my wife for today, because I want it. I got it. So yeah, use and gratification, and this is also divided in several aspects, but I think that would just take too much time to explain it. So that's a very nutshell-y explanation of the use and gratification theory. If you want to hear more about it, please do shout out. Maybe I should just make a whole video about use and gratification, about two-step flow and so on. Yeah, but so if you want to hear more, come to my class or shout out in the comments and I'll try to explain a little bit more. Okay, I hope the use and gratification theory was part of your decision making to tune into this week's episode of the MediaCast. If you want to hear more about media theories and get podcast recommendations, please shout out. I'm looking forward to this. Right after this, I'm gonna chill for a second, and then I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna watch it, not only listen to it. I'm gonna watch Elon Musk and Joe Rogan just to see if they're up to anything crazy, and then we discuss this hopefully next week. Let's see if the Tesla shares are going up again, if Bitcoin goes through the roof, and what else happens. Then again, to finish things off, just to get blah blah. Now I'm losing track. I'm getting tired after a whole day of work. Just to come full circle, mental health matters. If you know someone who struggles, reach out to them, give them a helping hand. If you struggle by yourself, tell your friends, tell me, talk to someone. We're all in this together, and yeah, together we make it work. See you next week. Take care.